Morning guys, and welcome back to I Like Our Watches 2. Now you may remember a few months ago on I Like Watches I reviewed the sensational Grand Seiko SBGN027. Incredible champagne sunburst dial, Zaratsu polished, fantastic high accuracy quartz movement. In that review I did spend quite a bit of time focusing on the incredible movement inside that watch, and I subsequently tried to give that watch away to one of you guys on the 1st of January. It's now the 15th of January and the lucky recipient hasn't claimed that watch, so I might actually be redrawing that giveaway. So if you haven't participated in that giveaway, you've still got time. I'll put a link in the video description. You've still got time. You've got 15 days or so. Anyway, the focus of this video is going to be on a more recent Grand Seiko containing a more recent version of that 9F62 movement that was in the Grand Seiko SBGN027. I have the SBGN027 on my wrist, a fairly new release by Grand Seiko containing the GMT high accuracy quartz movement, the 9F86 I believe it is. So in this video I'm going to tell you the five reasons why this watch deserves the utmost respect. This thing is incredible and I'm about to tell you exactly why. Now I must confess I've cheated a little bit for this video because I've written down all the points I want to mention before the video ends. The 5 reasons why this watch commands respect. Not that difficult to remember, but I've broken down each one of those 5 points to a number of little points and I want to make sure I include them all. Now the first one I want to mention is brand. Reason number 1, brand. Outside of Japan we may not see Seiko as a high-end premium brand, but inside of Japan Seiko has a far better reputation. Of course there are lots of sub-brands under Seiko. You've got Grand Seiko and you've also got Creedor, don't forget. Grand Seiko isn't Seiko's most premium brand or make of watches, it's actually Creedor. Creedor watches are far more expensive than Grand Seiko watches, but still Seiko outside of Japan still has a fantastic reputation, incredible history as well, and they are responsible for a number of technological advances and breakthroughs in the watch industry. So yeah, the brand is definitely one reason why this watch commands respect. Reason number 2 is the movement. Inside here we have a high accuracy GMT quartz movement, the 9F86. When I reviewed the SBGN027, which houses the 9F62, a slightly older and more simplified version of the movement inside this watch, I spent the first half of the video explaining just what goes into that movement and many reasons why it is so special, and it was obvious in the comments section that a lot of people learned some stuff from that video, which was fantastic. So yeah, not all quartz movements are the same, and the quartz movements inside these watches are incredible. Let me just explain why. Reason number 1, these movements are 100% in-house. Even the batteries are made by Seiko. Number 2, only the very best crystals are used inside these movements. They grow their own crystals, and then once they've picked the best crystals, they are tested thoroughly for 3 months and then paired up with a circuit board that has been individually tailored to suit that crystal. The movements are completely sealed to keep dust out and the lubricants in, and I've read online somewhere that the service intervals for these quartz movements, and there are jewels inside these movements, so yeah, they are jeweled quartz movements, so there are moving parts. The service intervals are 50 years. These movements have a date complication and it is instantaneous. The date changes in 1/2000th of a second. The movement of the second hand is solid. There's no play in the second hand because of a minute spiral spring. I can't explain to you how it works, it's just there. These movements also have high torque dual step motors, which means every time the second hand ticks, it's actually 2 half ticks to make a full tick, and what that means is you can actually have bigger hands on these quartz movements that you can on other quartz movements that don't have the high torque dual step motor. These are high accuracy quartz movements, so far more accurate than your already fairly accurate quartz movements, which are around plus minus 15 seconds a month. This is plus minus 10 seconds a year, and it achieves that through thermocompensation. What this watch does is it feels the ambient temperature 540 times a day and then makes tiny little adjustments to the circuitry to make sure that the crystal continues to vibrate at the pace that it needs to in order to be super duper accurate. Now the movement inside this watch has a couple of functions that the movement inside the SBGN027 doesn't have. The first one is, well, this is a GMT watch, so it's a 4-handed movement, so there's a GMT function which the SBGX263 obviously doesn't have. And the second one is it has a quick set hour hand, which means you can basically make the hour hand jump forwards and backwards by an hour without disturbing the minute hand or the second hand. And that's useful not just because it's a GMT, but it also helps you maintain the accuracy of this watch. Now, the third reason I think this watch deserves so much respect is, well, I've just mentioned it, the GMT function. This watch is a true or a traveler's GMT. There's actually two different types of GMT movements. You've got traveler's GMTs, and you've also got office GMTs. The NH34 is an office GMT, and it's more suited to people that don't travel. It allows people to have a second time zone on their wrist and sometimes a third time zone if they have a rotating 24-hour bezel. But this is a true or traveler's GMT, and the way it works is basically I would set the GMT hand to my local time here in the UK, and that would remain the same all the time. And then if I was to travel, I would use the quick set function for the hour hand to basically set the time for the place that I was going to, and it's the hour hand that actually adjusts the date. So the date would change depending on which time zone I was in, and then when I came back to the UK, yeah, I'd be able to move the hour hand back and then set the date back to the correct date. And you can do all that without disturbing the seconds hand, because again, you don't want to disturb the seconds hand. It's accurate to plus minus 10 seconds a year, so why would you want to stop the seconds hand? Number 4, and it's obviously build quality, Zaratsu finished steel, and you really can tell the difference, especially under macro. When I'm filming with this watch in my light box and I can see my face in the reflection of the polished steel, it is mirror-like. There are no distortions whatsoever. There are lots of other brands that do polishing fantastically well. But yeah, I've never ever seen a brand finish a watch quite as well as Grand Seiko, although I must confess I've not seen that many high-end luxury watches, but still, the finishing is sensational. Just the overall precision of the build, everything on the dial is just bang on. It is perfectly made. It just seems to be flawless. Now, I'm sure if you zoom in close enough, you will find some imperfections and flaws, but when you're looking at this watch with your naked eyes, yeah, it just seems incredible. And the reason number 5 is, well, the way it looks. I find Grand Seiko watches either beautiful or a bit, there's quite a lot of Grand Seiko watches in the range that I just don't like. No tingles whatsoever, but there are some watches like the SBGX263 and the SBGA373, another stunning champagne sunburst dial spring drive. I think I've got that reference number right. I absolutely melt when I see those watches, and yet there are some in their collection that I just, honestly, I really don't like them. But this is a really good looking watch, which surprised me because I'm not usually a fan of watches with stainless steel bezels, but I just find the bezel on this one a little bit smaller, a little bit more discreet than you find on some other very well-known watches. I also prefer the circular brushing. You don't have that sort of radiation brushing, that, what would you call it, almost sunburst brushing that some all stainless steel bezels have. I just find this one proportionally far better looking, and also the hands, because you've got that dual step motor, that high torque motor, they can put some fantastic hands on this watch. I love the black glossy dial, the applied indices. You've got those sort of little indentations or grooves on the applied indices, so you get that rainbow effect constantly coming through whenever you're looking at this watch under any sort of lighting conditions. There's always some incredible light play from this watch. I think it's a fantastic looking watch. It's actually a newer version of a watch that they already made, and I think they've improved the overall look of the watch. Love the contrasting white GMT hand. I also prefer the shape of the lugs, but it's not perfect. I've actually made a list of things that I would change if ever I got the opportunity to tell Grand Seiko how to improve their watch. The first one is, I'd love a capped seconds hand. Is that too much to ask? You're paying almost £3,000 for a watch. Come on, Grand Seiko, make the seconds hand capped. Number 2 is, well, the Zaratsu polishing. I love Zaratsu polishing, who doesn't? But I just think there's too much of it on the sides of the case. The original watch that this replaced actually had some brushing down the side of the case. This one fully Zaratsu polished down the sides, and that is going to be a bit of a scratch magnet, unfortunately. Number 3, and it's the day-night divide that sits around the outside of the dial. It doesn't change from night to day and from day to night. Bang on 6 or 9 o'clock. It sort of sits below the 6 and the 9 o'clock marker, which, I don't know, is just a bit weird. Why not have it swap from black to grey in the middle of that index? And the last one is, okay, it's quartz, so there's not a lot to look at, but these quartz movements are so beautifully decorated and finished, it's a shame that we can't see them. This one's got a solid case back, it's nice enough. But yeah, let's have a display case back. Let's see what's inside this watch. Well, I think that's pretty much all the points mentioned in this video, so we can put that down now. The SBGN027 retails in the UK for £2,830. It's not a cheap watch, but there's a lot of functionality there, a lot of reasons that I've listed in this video why this watch potentially represents good value for money. I tend to show good value for money, affordable watches on my channel, but every now and then I like to show a slightly more premium watch that I still think represents good value for money, and I do think this is one of those watches because I'm starting to really appreciate these days high accuracy quartz movements, and just generally not all quartz movements are the same. Of course there will be people watching this video, they won't be watching up to this point, they would have switched off ages ago, but there will have been people watching this video that as soon as I mentioned the word quartz they just switched off because they're not going to spend more than £50 on a quartz watch. And I think that's a real shame because some quartz watches are special, and I really do think this one is very special, as is the SBGX263, which I'm trying to give away. So yeah, make sure you take part in that giveaway, guys. Right, let me know what you think of this watch in the comments section and the review. And of course, as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Take care, look after yourselves. You'll see me again very soon.